I'm back, and in the comfort of this studio, it's hard to imagine I was ever away. I don't need to imagine, though, because what I saw is still etched in my mind. What I never knew is what I know now, which is that those people who live in Gaza are mainly, but unbelievably young. The average age is 17. That means that about 250,000 are under 10. And you know, if you know any 10-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, the idea in the looseness of a war zone that you can control your children, that they won't be somewhere where they can be hit, is, you know, beyond any kind of imagination. You can't hope to control that. So that in a very densely packed urban area, if you decide to throw missiles, shells, and the rest, then undoubtedly you will kill children. And that is what they're doing.
That was the voice of Jon Snow, face of Channel 4 News in England since 1989. He had recently visited Gaza, shocked, overwhelmed by what he saw, especially the suffering of the children. Who wouldn't be shocked and overwhelmed and pained by that? Jon Snow had tweeted out July 20th, if you strangle a people, deny them supply for years, extreme action is inevitable. The one begets the other. Actually, the blockade is the result of Hamas violence, not the cause of it. But here's what I struggle with. You'll see, we'll play a couple more clips where Jon Snow is blatantly not looking at this in an equal, unbiased way. All of Gaza does not have to be a war zone. Who required Hamas to attack Israel? Number one. When Gaza was returned to Palestinian control, and by the way, when it had been under Egyptian control, the Egyptians did not do anything to enhance the standard of living and the well-being of the Palestinians living there. When Israel said, okay, it's not our best security interest to keep trying to govern the land there, they had about 8,000 Jews living there. Those people were displaced. Physically, it was a violent upheaval within Israel. This happened almost 10 years ago, roughly 10 years ago. It was a terribly emotional time for Israelis to physically drag out Jews from where they'd been living. But they had developed the land. They had developed greenhouses. They had buildings. What did Palestinian leadership do to those? Destroyed them. Israel thought, okay, here's at least a jump start. Let us leave you what we have been working on for years and years and years. It's a good source of income and so on. No. Those get demolished and destroyed. A beautiful synagogue demolished and destroyed. In fact, there were reports that some of the concrete and steel from that were used then to build terror tunnels. This is what we're dealing with. So with all respect to Jon Snow's compassion, which we all share, all of Gaza doesn't have to be a war zone. You don't have to be shooting rockets from schoolyards or commandeer a hospital and shoot from there or have an entrance to a terror tunnel under someone's home. No one's requiring you to attack Israel, number one, and thousands of bombs over a period of years. And number two, why do it from civilian areas? If Israel's going to fight back or fire back or try to take out people trying to kill them, you're endangering the population, right? Let's go to clip number 11.
Now, of course, Hamas, for its part, was throwing rockets into Israel, designed, ideally, as they would put it, to kill Israelis. But of course, Israel, courtesy of American finance, has invented the most brilliant shield, which is keeping absolutely everything out. And that's a big difference.
Those villainous, miserable Israelis, so brilliant that they constructed the Iron Dome defense system to keep missiles out. It's just not fair. People are trying to kill you. And you devise a defense system, and with the help of American money, America's guilty, America's complicit too, in Israel's self-defense. So it's not fair. It's just, who told Hamas to try to kill Israeli civilians? Who told Hamas to infiltrate, say, a kibbutz or infiltrate another area, a settlement somewhere, and slice the throats of little children, including infants, and kill a whole family in cold blood, except ones that weren't there, and then celebrate it? Who told Hamas to do that? And for the Israelis who were killed today, which of those missiles Which of those missiles did the Iron Dome keep out? And for the people of Sderot, who border on Gaza, who've had to live for years within 15 seconds of a bomb shelter where people have been killed, and where Israeli children have been traumatized, perhaps for life, without help, growing up under constant assault and fire. I guess the Iron Dome, that villainous Iron Dome, wasn't around in time. I mean, what kind of moral equation is this? It's very troubling. Clip number 12.
So when I last spoke to the Norwegian doctor who is one of those dealing with the consequences of this bombing, I asked him how many children have been wounded. They've registered 1,310. How many children dead? 166. But that number is growing all the time. That is what makes this something that every one of us has to confront. We have to know that in some way we actually share some responsibility for those deaths, because for us it is no priority whatever to stop it. Our United Nations, our government, our world is not that interested.
Again, the casualties, shocking, horrific, mind-boggling, agonizing, terrible. I don't know if Jon Snow has reported on the 160 Palestinian children, Gazan children, who, according to Hamas authorities, as recorded in the Journal of Palestine Studies, said that the 160 children died in the building of the terror tunnels. God knows if that number is even a fraction of being accurate. Why not an outcry over that? But let me say this in all seriousness. I'm speaking now as a non-journalist, yes, a biblical scholar and professor and radio host, but as a non-journalist, I'm speaking to an experienced journalist. So with all deference and respect to Mr. Snow, perhaps if it was simply realized at the beginning that Hamas is fighting this war knowing it has no possibility of winning, but its goal is a war in the media to make Israel look bad by killing its women and children. If you know that, then there is a way to report, to put the blame squarely on them, and not to facilitate more anger in the Muslim riots in London and other cities. Perhaps then the people of Gaza would be able to say no to Hamas leadership more quickly, and Israel would be able to live in peace with their neighbors. Perhaps, sir, there's more complicity on the media than you realize. I have taken issue with journalists. I've taken issue now with a prominent journalist in England, Jon Snow. I applaud his compassion for suffering children and others in Gaza and other areas who could not have a broken heart seeing the terrible results of this war, Hamas's attack on Israel and Israel's response. But I've taken issue and said that there is complicity in the media when there is a stoking of anti-Israel sentiment, which is exactly what Hamas is looking for. It's the only reason, or the primary reason, they wage this war, because they know they're not going to defeat Israel. That's obvious. So listen to this from Paris, clip number 18.
There is a strong feeling inside the French Jewish community that it's time to leave.
The mother in this Jewish family has already been called a dirty Jew by the neighbors. She's instructed her daughter how to slip her Star of David inside her blouse when she goes outside, and has told her sons to be careful about when they wear their kippas.
They have worn the kippah since they were very young, but over the past few years, I have told them maybe it's better not to wear it sometimes.
There have been close to 8,000 anti-Semitic incidents in France since 2000, and every time Israel acts in self-defense against the Palestinians, the danger increases. France's Arab and Muslim citizens have staged large and more violent demonstrations, including one in which 200 Jews were trapped inside a synagogue.
I mean, you have to realize how terrifying this is, given the history of European anti-Semitism, given the violence, given the rising tide of even radical Islam within France, something that France has to deal with, just as France put aside Israel. And notice that all Jews are somehow responsible. All Jews are somehow guilty, even though many Jews are not even that strongly Zionistic. They're now all guilty, and that's why you'll hear the Hitler phrases and back to the ovens and kill the Jews, because there's often a fine line between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. But listen to this, and this is what I want you to hear when I talk about media complicity. Listen to clip number 19.
French Jews now face a perfect storm, with a war in Gaza, growing numbers of French Muslims, and the growing popularity of the far-right National Front.
Jews are being insulted and threatened, not only by Muslims, but also by members of the far right and by leftists who hate Israel.
Jews do blame the French media for the rise in anti-Semitism because of the way it attacks Israel on a daily basis.
The media have been inciting against Israel and the Jews for more than a decade.
We are fed up with the image of Israel that is continuously repeating itself.
When you watch TV, when you listen to the radio, or when you read newspapers, you always feel hate messages against Israel.
All right, so let's just think about this. You have the history of anti-Semitism in Europe to start, a lot of it the fault of the professing church. Then you have the large presence of Muslims in France and England and their hostility towards Israel and the Jewish people. Then you have the media reporting in such a way as if Israel is the evil bully beating up on innocent men, women, and children. You have all this together. You have ingredients for disaster. You have ingredients for riot. You have ingredients for violence against Jews. I mean, there was Jews specifically targeted in France just because he was Jewish. They found his picture, found who he was, and beat him up. And many would like to take it far beyond beating someone up. There is media complicity, especially when you realize, to repeat, and this was known by analysts from day one, that Hamas did not start a war with Israel, kidnap and murder Israeli teenagers in cold blood, and then start launching rockets into Israel after there had been relative calm before that. They did not do it thinking they were going to win a war or battle. They did it thinking that they could win in the war of public opinion, make Israel look bad, make Hamas look good. And to the extent the media is complicit with that, then the media has to do some real soul searching and ask, are there even more casualties because of their reporting? Israel's not guiltless. Israel's not perfect. Israel needs to be held to a high standard of justice that they espouse. And by the way, read the Israeli Code of Ethics, read what the soldiers are trained in, read even now how they were trained before going into Gaza. And remember, I'll repeat this, if Israel wanted to inflict damage on civilians, they could wipe out Gaza overnight. And the reason that Israel is losing its own young men in battle, and they're dying, dozens of Israeli soldiers now have died in the conflict. The reason that's happening is because to take out these tunnels and other areas, they need to get in themselves. Otherwise, if they just bomb them out, too many civilians will be killed. So Israelis die to preserve the life of civilians. Those are facts. The media needs to do some real soul searching here.